For you from Kaufman and Stigger, and the Kentucky Artisan Distillery is here, and it includes so much. With me now is Steve Thompson and Liz, I want to get this right, Ratliff?
Yes.
All
yes,
right,
sir.
Liz, welcome. Steve, welcome.
Hi, John. How are you?
Okay, I'm doing very well. I've had just the most interesting conversation with these two before the camera started rolling here. This encompasses so much. The Kentucky Artisan Distillery. Steve, you by yourself are interesting enough. You have quite the history. But first, tell me about the Kentucky Artisan Distillery.
Well, Kentucky Artisan Distillery, we bought a old refrigeration plant, ice cream plant in Crestwood about 4 years ago, and we decided to put a distillery in it and to make various brands, bourbons, vodkas, gins, whatever. And also we would invite people in to come and distill our own product and make it who had a good idea. In that process, we obtained a couple of really great customers. And so we sort of evolved from that time to right now. We're pretty much doing everything from all the way from farm to bottle. We grow all of our own grains on our farm next door, and we distill everything. And we have our own aging warehouses. We age everything out there that we make, and we bottle it and ship it to waiting customers.
Now, we've talked before on this show about farm to table, and that has become very trendy. Farm to bottle, I like it because here in Kentucky, you know, fine bourbons and whiskeys really mean something to us. You're the right guy, Steve, because your history, you're not just one of those people who says, oh, I love good bourbon, I think I know a lot about it. You know a whole lot about it. Tell everyone about your background with Brown-Forman and how you came to be the president and CEO of what is now the Kentucky Artisan Distillery.
Well, I got into this business a long, long time ago, right when I graduated from school, but ended up in 1987 after serving terms with Diageo at Brown-Forman here as president of the distilling company. And at that time we were doing all of our own distilling, Canadian Mist and Old Forester in early times. And Jack Daniel's Woodford Reserve didn't come until 1995, but we pretty much did everything. And then when I left Brown-Forman, I sort of bought another company that has nothing to do with this, which I still have, and I decided that I missed this distilling business, so I got back into it in Maui, Hawaii, and now Crestwood, and built another distillery. So that's where we are right now.
Well, with your knowledge, obviously you know about a quality product, and before we talk about that, Liz, I want you to tell me a little bit about, you know, what people can see here, because it's relatively new. You were telling me it's only been in existence for about a year, is that right?
The distillery's been there for 4, but our tour center opened a year ago, Labor Day of last year, and we couldn't do any tastings until March of this year, which is kind of a downer on
because it was a dry county.
It was a dry county,
yeah.
So we could make all we wanted, couldn't pour samples, sell bottles, so we had to just kind of sit and wait. That went through in December, and it's really changed since then. It's just taken off for us. So now folks see really the entire process, grain to bottle. You go through the bottling room, the entire distillery from milling all the way up to barreling. You walk through our laboratory on every tour, and you finish in our tasting room, which is kind of a mini museum of Steve's collections. Some of them are on the table in front of us. Then you get your tasting, finally, from our bank teller window bar that is from the Bank of Pee Wee Valley that closed in the 50s. So it's a real grain-to-bottle process. It's really kind of the down-and-dirty reality of distilling. You see people working, people sweating, rolling barrels by hand, everything by hand. So.
Yeah, I love this because if you're a whiskey or a bourbon aficionado, I think this is kind of like a must-stop. You've got to know, because to me, knowledge is power. The more you know, the probably more that you can really not only understand about bourbon, but really be able to be a more sophisticated taster because you know the process a little bit better. Steve, tell me about some of these items, because this looks like a weird science project, some of this that you have in front of me.
Well, you know, there's several things here. These are obviously lab equipment, a refractometer.
What do you do with those things when it comes to bourbon and whiskey?
You're measuring the sugar and alcohol. In the distilling business, we bring in carbohydrates in the form of corn and grains, and we cook them and get them into a sugar position, and then we convert that sugar to alcohol. So throughout this thing, we're using different instruments to measure the processes in terms of the conversion. Have we converted the starch to sugar, and have we converted the sugar to alcohol, and how much alcohol do we have? And so these are pretty much really old equipment, these three things here. That were used, you know, for many, many years ago. Right now, we take a sample and we throw it into a machine, and it reads out on our computer. And so this
it's
stuff,
a little different.
Yes, it used to take us 3 hours to find out the alcohol content. Now it takes about 30 seconds. So it's advanced a great deal. These are just old Cooper's tools. We don't make our own barrels out there, but we certainly use the hammer to knock in the bungs as we fill them, and we also drive hoops when we have loose barrels.
Let's talk about some of this bourbon history that sits in front of us here. Okay, if the camera would take a look at some of these bottles. So how far back are we going here with bourbons and whiskeys?
Well, out at our distillery, we go all the way back to pre-Prohibition. And we have many samples out there. There's other people in town that have really great collections, and ours is sort of interesting. But we have an old one I pulled today, and some bottoms up that was made by Brown Forman way long time ago. Some of the old Taylor products made in Owensboro that are not there. Millwood used to be a huge distillery on Millwood over here right now, and it's no longer, but they used to make some great bourbons and so on. So most of these are certainly, some of the have been revised. For instance, the old Taylor brand has sort of come alive again, and with the historic significance of bourbon in Kentucky, a lot of the old labels are suddenly reappearing on the marketplace.
I love this. So from farm to bottle, that's the experience that you're going to get at the Kentucky Artisan Distillery. What do you hear from folks who tour when they come in? Because I would think maybe this is a little more, it sounds, and you correct me if I'm wrong, a little bit more in depth than some of the bourbon tastings and visits you may make, correct?
It is, absolutely. We get a lot of visitors that come here from wherever, and they want to see the big distilleries that they want to come see, they've heard about, but they want to see a small craft distillery and see what that side of it is about. And so they'll come here and see the real kind of reality of distilling. We also have brands people have heard of. Jefferson's Bourbon is a huge international brand, so that really draws a lot of people. And we're 20 minutes from downtown Louisville, so it's a quick little in and out if you have people in town rather than taking a full day to get somewhere.
Yeah, if you have visitors in town, you haven't got time for the Bourbon Trail. This is perfect. Yes. I love this. Let's talk about some of the brands that we have in front that you actually produce. Steve, if you would. Now, and I'm also curious, from what I understand about Producer Sales, everyone who works there is very, very knowledgeable. This is probably something that was important to you, Steve. If I make a visit, are you there? Are you there, Steve? Someone who can really answer questions for me?
Somebody's there that can answer questions. It's you'll be able to talk to the master distiller or the people out in the plant or the people actually handling the grain. Everybody there. We have representatives from both University of Kentucky and University of Louisville. Just wanted to put that out so we're non-biased.
Red or blue, it's all okay, right?
It's all okay.
We all love bourbon.
Yes, we all love bourbon, and so although each one of them will give you a little bit different taint on their story, but at any rate.
So what do we have here? This looks like some good stuff here.
We have over on the left is, on my left, your right, I guess, is Whiskey Row. Whiskey Row is a product that is made out there. It's a combination of 3 different distillates from 3 different distilleries. We use our own distillate in every one of them, and then I have purchased bourbon from out of state, primarily from Pennsylvania and New York as the blend, and the object was to create a blended bourbon as opposed to blended scotch on the same thing. The middle one with the blue is High Spire. It's 100% rye whiskey. It has 95% rye and 5% malted rye, and it's one of the few 100% rye whiskeys on the market right now. And of course, I'm going to turn it over and to the Jefferson, and Liz here is the expert on the Jefferson brand.
Tell me about the Jefferson brand, Liz.
So Jefferson's been around since 1997, founded by Trey and Chet Zoller. Most people are, if you like bourbon, you've either had it or seen it on a shelf, and that's what we hear from folks. It's a blended bourbon. We're doing distilling out there for them, and also some of their more experimental things. We've got our Jefferson's Groth cask finish, finished in wine casks out at the distillery. That's done on site there, so we do some of their newer experimental stuff for them.
Liz, Steve, I have enjoyed this very, very much. For folks who would like more information or to take a tour, go to your website, give you a phone call.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. This has been very informative. I could spend a couple hours with you guys. This is good stuff. There's the information up on your screen again. It's the Kentucky Artisan Distillery. All the info is there. Jot it down. It's worth the trip, and it's beautiful out there this time of year. We'll be right back with some legal advice from Kaufman and Stigger on Wade Free Listens Live. It's Feel Good Friday. Welcome to the weekend.